What's up, everyone? I'm Jackie,
And I'm Lindsay,
and we are Women Leaders in Sports Medicine.
here to help you grow your game and own your game.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining us for another amazing episode of Women Leaders in Sports Medicine. We're joined today by Dr. Tera Giroux, sports chiropractor of the UFC Performance Institute. Thanks for joining us today, Tara. How are you doing?
Thank you.
I'm great, guys. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, we're super excited to have you on. We had Heather on, and she was great. And she was like, you have to talk to Tara. And so we're like, yes, let's get her on. So I'm just glad we were able to connect and make this happen.
Yeah, me too. I'm super excited to talk with you guys today.
Yeah. So I know you guys are definitely back in the swing of things with fights going on. Maybe could you just touch on a little bit like how that's been, the transition from you probably were busy even though you weren't seeing patients, but the transition from kind of being quarantined to now back into the treating realm.
Yeah, absolutely. So we are in Las Vegas. So we have had quarantine rules for Nevada. I think our first day that we kind of got shut down was March 16th. So kind of what we've been doing is obviously just working from home as much as we can. Obviously, we can't see patients, but what we've really tried to get better at as a team is virtual medicine or virtual consulting.
Mm-hmm.
We have a couple different pillars to our team and what we do. So we have outreach for sports medicine, strength and conditioning, nutrition, and sports science. And, I think it's just been really cool to kind of, one, have time to do these kinds of things and kind of like play with the waters on what really works for us and our team. Mm-hmm. As far as, telemedicine and remote programming go. So that's been super fun to kind of explore with, our roster is a global roster of 600 athletes. So there are a lot of times in just our general day where we're reaching out for athletes at different camps all around the world. But now I think we're able to kind of hone in on some of that communication skills and just get better at it and kind of figure out what works for us. And then we've been really working on some exciting projects that I'm not sure if I can exactly say yet, but they will be out. They will be out in the end of the year, the beginning of the next year. That will be really great for kind of anyone that wants to get into the sport of MMA or who's already in the sport of MMA and working with these kinds of athletes. So just one of our goals is to share what we're learning and share our knowledge and just kind of have everyone rise up with us and be on the same page. So it's been so nice to have time to do that stuff. Whereas, the day-to-day hectic of seeing patients, doesn't leave much time or, you can definitely burn yourself out easy. So that's been super fun. So I guess about 7 weeks into quarantine, we got the call that we're going to start some fights in Jacksonville. So Heather and I went out to Jacksonville the beginning of May, and we had 3 fights in 1 week. And I think we serviced around 68 athletes maybe that in those 3 fight cards. So we were very busy, but luckily we were both able to go. And I think that just really helped to just make sure we didn't, get crazy and overworked and stuff like that, and just kind of work together on everything that we could and add our 2 cents when we could to any COVID protocols, things like that. So needless to say, Jacksonville was like a learning experience, but I guess we pulled it off. Everything went really well. No one was sick. No one's still sick from it. So I guess kudos to that. So got the green light, and then we're back in Vegas now. We had our first fight we pulled off actually last night. Mm-hmm. So we're starting a 6-week fight week trail now that will all be in Vegas. So we're not traveling yet, obviously, to any events, but hopefully we're just trying to host as many as we can. And we don't have fans in the stands yet, but, I think things are starting to slowly open up. So hopefully by July, we'll be able to kind of get back to some more normalcy. So
yeah, definitely. That's great. Things are kind of opening back up too, because I'm sure it feels nice to be back, actually with your athletes and helping them and doing what you love to do, but also nice to have a little bit of time to work on some of those projects, which I know a lot of individuals are excited about. So all your listeners, keep an eye out in the new year if you're interested in MMA, because there's going to be some awesome things coming out, I'm sure.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, you two are basically super women too, like 60 plus athletes. I think that's something that like a lot of people trying to get into professional sports or whatever it may be don't always realize that when you go on the road, if you are the only one, you are the only one servicing tons of athletes. Like that can be so exhausting. And so I'm glad that you both were able to go and kind of like support each other too, because that can be a really exhausting burnout type of game as well, for sure.
Yeah, and it's definitely when you're on the road, you are on call 24/7. You know, you don't say no, you fit people in, you make time. So that's just the world of pro sports. So, and it was definitely interesting going from like not doing that much, to be honest with you, to like being back in the swing of things. It kind of like, okay,
here we go. Shock to
here we go. Yes, a little sore for the hands are a little sore for the first few days, but you know, we made it work. Push through. I mean, and it felt, you know, it was good to see everyone again and kind of feel like a little bit back to normalcy. And I was able to eat at a restaurant for the first time in like 2 months and just like order a beer and a burger. And that was probably the best thing about it.
I still don't know what that's like. I'm in LA and we're slowly working our way to opening back up. So we'll see.
I hope it comes for you soon.
So with this kind of like first season of our podcast, we're really exploring people's stories and kind of how they got to where they were, struggles, triumphs, all that type of stuff. So we love to start this off with basically just asking, what is your why of getting into chiropractic?
Yeah, sure. So like growing up, I grew up in a small town in Michigan, and I didn't really know anyone who went to chiropractors, to be honest with you, like nobody, like it just wasn't a thing. And so I was an athlete my whole life. And I had some various sports injuries and everything like that. And it really wasn't until college that I got exposed to chiropractic. Like I knew about it, but I'd never been to one. I didn't really know what they did. I just knew that I was in pain from some old injuries, and I ended up getting like a job working like a front desk at a chiropractic clinic just to make some extra money in school. And so kind of got exposed to it that way for the first time, and, you know, got my first like treatment and adjustment. And I was just like, wow, that is amazing. Like I feel incredible. And, you know, there's so much more to this that I think people really realize. And I think it's a great, like, kind of natural form of medicine or, you know, healing or whatever that is. So I wasn't a big fan. I never really have been a big fan of like medicine, hospitals, like, you know, I just like to kind of do things a little bit more naturally. So it kind of clicked for me when I was like in school and working at this chiro clinic, like, wow, I can kind of blend both of these worlds. And I thought what was really neat about chiropractic was that there's so many different ways that you can practice, which is kind of a pro and a con. But like you can really do your own thing, and you can, you know, everyone's pretty much in private practice these days for chiropractic. I know we have a few people now who are in like hospital settings, but I bet 90% of my profession is in their own private practice, either as an owner or an associate. And when you have that, I mean, you can kind of choose to practice how you want. So I liked kind of the freedom behind it. I liked that I could work with athletes, do sports chiropractic. I realized that was a thing. And I was like, perfect. I can blend sports medicine and I can blend, you know, healthcare or whatever. And so that just kind of clicked for me. And there were definitely moments where I was like, nah, go to PT school, or no, go to nursing, or, you know, do something. But, you know, I just kept coming back to, it just felt like something I was, I guess, maybe called for in a way, or just like clicked for me. So I applied for some grad schools and some programs, and I kind of explored those. And I went down to my alma mater, which was at Palmer College of Chiropractic in Florida. And I just checked it out, and I was just like, this just feels good. This just feels like home, where I'm supposed to be. Like, I'm going to give this a shot. And within kind of that first quarter of school, I was like, all right, yeah, I think I'm onto something here. I think I can do this for a while. And then, you know, but in school, you learn your sciences and you get through all that stuff, and you get through boards. And then you kind of have to take your own initiative to figure out like what you want to specialize in, right? What clicks for you. So I kind of already knew it was sports. And so I kind of just tried to kind of gravitate myself towards those people who were kind of already doing it. You know, I had like CIs that were like the sports CIs. So I tried to get in with them for my clinicals. And I tried to go to different student clubs that were focused on, like sports rehab, sports medicine, and just kind of explore those options and try to learn as much as I could about it and kind of go from there. And so kind of towards the end of my school, we had a cool opportunity where we get to like pick our own CI for a quarter, and we can go anywhere we want to. And so I reached out to the docs who were the team chiros for the Carolina Panthers in Charlotte. One of them is was a grad from my school too, and he came and spoke. And I just took advantage of going up and being like, hey, I am going to be in your area. Can I come by? Can I come shadow? And just like put myself out there. And like, he was just like, yeah, of course you can come whenever you want to. And I was just like, wow, really? Like, you don't mind? Like, and he's like, no, of course not. So I went down there and I shadowed, I think over like Christmas break, and it was a practice that I knew I wanted to be in. So I wanted to put myself into that setting. So he had chiros, PTs, I think strength coaches, an acupuncture, and like a massage therapist on staff. So it was this awesome integrated clinic, with chiropractic. That's a very rare, that's like a niche, like you don't find that. And but I knew that's what I wanted. And I knew that's what was going to work. And I don't know how I knew it, but I just, I just thought that this was just for me and this is how it should be in my mind. So I stalked him and I went up there and I went and I was like, hey, can I come do my clinicals here? And he was like, yeah, absolutely. Like, of course, we'd love to have you. So I did that. And that was kind of, I think, my first like exposure into like the world that I wanted to be in, and just kind of solidified like my reasons and my why. So I had a great experience there. And during that time was able to just like meet a bunch of other docs by going to seminars and putting myself out there and just kind of figuring out like what I really wanted. I think a lot of people sometimes they just kind of go for like the easy way, or like this is convenient, and they don't really like stop and ask themselves that questions of like, what is your why? Or just what do you want? Like what do you want? And how can you find a way to like either make that happen or get close to it or have baby steps toward it? So I just kind of figured out like what I wanted, and I went from there, and I didn't stop until I got to where I am now.
I love it. There's a couple good points in there. Like one, you ended up finding and staying true to like the center, like one of the centers of your why, and like wanting to find wellness and healing in ways other than like the traditional, health systems, whether it's either chiro or PT or whatever. And so you ended up kind of coming into a model where that's like the dream for all of us. Like we all want to, I hope so, but we all hope to be in like an interdisciplinary clinic where everything is kind of in-house and we're able to learn and grow from each other. And then the other thing I think you brought up on a couple ways, for some reason it's been coming up a lot more recently, and that's the idea of like going with your gut, but like working to figure out if that's appropriate with your passion. And so kind of staying true to just what your intuition was saying, and it helped you kind of lead the direction that you wanted to go, I think is really cool.
Thank you.
Yeah. And you already kind of jumped into this, which is great because it's really what a lot of listeners want to know, kind of like, oh, how did you get to where you are? Like, what did you do? What set you apart? So you obviously working with athletes and clientele of that caliber in the clinic setting that you mentioned, I'm sure one solidified your why, like, all right, this is where I want to be. Like, I can handle this. I can do this. But what were maybe some other like unique opportunities or experiences that you had even in that setting or afterwards that allowed you to end up with the Performance Institute, the UFC Performance Institute?
Yeah, that's an awesome question. So I feel like my journey for that really started like while I was in school. So I was already like taking seminars, as many as I could, as many as came through my school, like whoever spoke, like I was there. I wanted to learn everything that I could. And I knew it was just either going to tell me what I wanted or what I didn't want. And either one of those, I think, is a learning experience and is going to show you something. So I really think one of like my number one thing on like how I got here was that I invested in myself. And kind of what that means was and this might not be an option for everyone, and I totally understand that, but I took like every ounce of energy, dollar, extra money that I had, and I invested in myself by just teaching, like learning, really. And so, yes, I am to this day a seminar junkie, and I love to learn and I like to take everything in. And, but it's more than just like knowing every technique and feeling like, oh yeah, I've taken everything, I do all this stuff. It's not really about that and like a list of seminars you've taken. It's about like, okay, you're continuously learning, continuously growing. How can you find something, that a takeaway from there that can take away, but then blend it into like what you want and what you know and and how you want to practice. And then also like meeting people there. Like that's a big thing about like seminars that people really underestimate, is all these other docs are very like-minded, or they are where you want to be. So why won't you take them out for lunch or for dinner or for beer, for a coffee or whatever it is, and pick their brain? Or go and kind of connect with the teacher there. I mean, you've paid for their knowledge. So, if you can go and talk with them during breaks and stuff like that, and using that time to pick their brains in different ways. Like maybe it's a business question, maybe it's a personal question, maybe it's not so technique driven. But like there's just so many different like good things that come out of like going to seminars. And I think that people shy away from it because, I mean, yes, it's expensive and I get that, but I think you have to invest in yourself, because I mean, I don't think that I would have gained the knowledge that I have and the time that I have without doing this. And because, I mean, I think just, when you're at that elite level, like people want you to have a certain amount of experience and a certain amount of, maybe this technique or that technique. So it's good to get that stuff, obviously, but they want to know that you've like, I think just looking at like, wow, you've really put the time in to do this. Like you're really dedicated to it. Stuff like that, I think it gets overlooked. But I think once you find like that right job or that right boss who's going to appreciate that stuff, it's going to pay off for you. So that was just like, I think that's my number one thing, is I think investing in yourself any way you can. And if you can't afford the seminars, read books, read podcasts, maybe see if your friend goes and gets the seminar notes from them and ask them questions.
Yep.
So, right? Like whatever you got to do, like make it work. And, after that Charlotte, North Carolina internship, I moved, I was in North Carolina for like a year or two practicing, just kind of like a general, like medium sports clinic, and knew it wasn't for me. And so like, I was just kind of like, okay, hey, I'm not growing here anymore. I don't feel like I'm like pushing myself and learning enough. I feel like I could go somewhere and, else and grow more. And so that's what I did. I literally like started just looking for other jobs. I quit my job. I like broke up with my boyfriend, and I literally moved all the way across the country to Seattle. And I was like, hey, I have a chance to work in some amazing clinics out here. Like everyone on the West Coast is super great as far as like just kind of progressive, forward thinking, like alternative medicine minded. So it was the population that I wanted, rather than, maybe the South, which was a little harder to break into. But yeah, just moving out to Seattle, I had a great like mentorship kind of like niche I had built out there. And I've got a job finally with the chiro who is the chiro for the Seattle Seahawks, and had kind of that same model of clinic that the Panthers docs had. So I knew I just had to put myself in those positions and push myself out of my comfort zone. If it's moving across the country to do that and to take a job where you don't know anyone, like it was just never in my mind that I was going to like fail or that it wasn't going to work. I knew somehow like I was going to make it happen. I was going to make it work somehow, some way. I didn't give myself no for an answer kind of thing. So just, I think having that determination and that drive to like really go after what you want. Like I remember my mom and I getting a screaming match being like, don't move to Seattle. Like nothing's out there. I'm not going to come visit you. And I'm just like, I'm going, like you can support me or not, but I'm gone. Like, this is what I need. And you just got to listen to yourself and your gut, and like, don't let anyone tell you otherwise. It's not worth it because they're wrong. Like they'll be wrong. I bet you.
Yeah.
I mean, she was. So that's my little journey.
Yeah. I mean, just to go off of that really quickly, like no one knows yourself best but you. Sometimes it's not comfortable to like sit down with yourself and like quiet the noise and like really think about what your gut feeling is or what you might actually need, because it can be uncomfortable, but like you said, no one kind of knows what you want, and like if it's your gut feeling, go with it. I mean, I think throughout your whole journey there's a lot of different applicable things listeners can even take from that too, right? Like it's not always easy to invest in yourself for financial reasons or see that it will pay off in the long term, but if you have a little bit of faith too, it probably will. And if you can afford it too, it probably will. And I love that you touched on like with these seminars, you didn't kind of do it to be like the guru in whatever that seminar was. Like you did it to add tools to your toolbox to like help you grow, to help your patients, right?
Yes.
And I love that you brought up using these seminars as a little bit of networking, because I mean, I don't know, it just hasn't come up yet on the podcast. And now that you say that, I'm like, oh, I do that all the time. Like one of the instructors for Johnny Owen's blood flow restriction training, like I've been in contact with him since I took the course, and he's given us like 5 different women that he think would love to help us out. And if I had never just taken the time to like gone up and been like, so like, where do you actually work? And like, tell me about your practice. Jack and I wouldn't have been fortunate enough to be connected with these other amazing women. So
exactly.
I love that you brought that up, because that's a great opportunity to surround yourself with like-minded people who have like the same energy, the same drive, and to kind of like help you, or even like you help them. And then just to kind of wrap this up, but like with risk taking, again, I love that you kind of followed your gut and you're like, this is what I think I need, and I'm going to take a risk, and like it's going to work out. I think it's hard sometimes to have a little bit of faith when you don't know the outcome, and you might not be able to 100% control everything that's going on. So I just love that you touched on that for our listeners. Thank you.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, I mean, I think Lindsay, you hit the nail on the head with pretty much everything I was going to say as well. I mean, I think looking at younger clinicians and people coming out of their field, there is this feeling that they need to be a guru. And I think they look at the people they aspire to be, and they see all the initials behind their name, and they think like, oh, I need to do that to get to that same position. But every single person that we've talked to, or if they talk to them, they're not doing it for the reasons of that. They're doing it like, I think this would be a good asset for my athlete, or I had a colleague that took this and said this would be a good part of my toolbox. So I totally agree with that kind of statement about investing in yourself for the right reasons, not just to have the initials behind your name, but to really progress yourself as a clinician. So I love kind of touching on that a little bit. So you ended up in Seattle. How did you get to the UFC? How did that happen?
Did you always want to be with MMA?
I had never even thought about MMA before. So I was in Seattle for about 3 years, and I had met my boyfriend at the time, and literally it's kind of funny and ironic because I am a super sports person. Like, I'm from Detroit. I went to Michigan State. I love my Big Ten. I love doing Detroit sports. I watch everything. I follow everything. I always have my whole life. And for some reason, MMA and UFC, I'd only kind of maybe watched if a friend had ordered it, or it was on at a sports bar or something like that. But really didn't know. I knew who Conor McGregor was, right? Whatever, that's it. But when I met my boyfriend, ironically, MMA was the only sport he followed. So literally I was like, okay, you can watch a Michigan State football game Saturday morning, and then I'll watch the fight with you Saturday night.
Yeah, so there you go.
So it was halfway into our relationship, and kind of towards the end of that, we were in Seattle, where I saw this job posting online. And you don't, and I know what everyone's thinking is you don't usually get jobs like this with just a job posting online, but it was there. It was, it was on Teamwork Online, and I kind of was oh, this is interesting. And, kind of read everything, and I was like, wow. I mean, they were at the time looking for it was a broad range. They were either looking for a PT, an ATC, or a chiro. Now, obviously, you guys have talked to Heather. She's a PT, and she also had an ATC on staff at the time too, who's awesome. but they both worked at the USOC for a really long time where it's, it's very chiro heavy. So I think that like deep down, I think she was like, I think I need a chiro, like I think we need to complete the team. At least I hope that she thought that. But so the job posting was for anything, but I kind of went through the list and I was like, okay, I have all of these qualifications that they're asking for. I just feel like there's no way in hell that this is ever going to get across anybody important's desk off this online website. There's no way they're going to get this, right? And I don't know who to contact to even, maybe go around a different way to get there. So I like went back and forth for days or maybe even weeks on like, okay, should I even bother? Like, I'm probably not going to get this, like, whatever. Just kind of like that doubt, even though like I had the checklist down, And so finally one night, I think it was like the end of October, I was like, you know what, like just send it in. What do you have to lose? Like really, like if they don't call you back, that's fine. And if they do, like, that'd be great. So I sent it in and like 6 weeks went by and it was like right before Christmas and I got a call from HR and they were like, hey, we really liked your resume. We want to set up like a Skype phone call. So I was like, wow, even if I got a Skype phone call to talk to these people, like that's awesome. That means I'm going in the right direction. I didn't think of anything by it. I was obviously very excited, but I was still like, there's still like a 1 in a million shot, right? That I'm going to get this position. So I go to I get to the Skype interview and it's real quick. It's like a 30-minute interview. And I can tell I'm on this like big ass screen on the wall and they're sitting on like at like a board table. And it's like Heather and like Forrest Griffin, my boss, Duncan, my other boss, like James, I think. And I'm like, talk about intimidation. It was like and I think it was like before Christmas. I think it was like a fight week. Like they all just looked pissed. They all looked exhausted. Like they didn't want to be there at all. Like they were just like, I was like, I tried my best to like crack a smile and like make a joke and like lighten the mood. And I think I got
just
one
like
out at the end.
stone-faced.
Yes, I was like, they hate me, I was like, this is awful. So I don't know, I like blacked out. It was like rapid fire questions for like 20 or 30 minutes. I was like, I don't even know what I said, but I think I made them laugh at the end. So hopefully they'll call me back. So like another month goes by and I'm like, yeah, I didn't get this. This is whatever. That was a cool experience. But I got another call and they invited me down and it was like a, in person half day, hang out with us. And I got there and, they were nothing but nice and, showed me around, kind of like let me meet everyone. And I think they just really wanted to get to know the person I was, which I appreciated so much. Like, it wasn't like, what are your top 3 weaknesses and strengths? Like, it was just like, tell me about yourself. Like, what do you like? What do you do? Like, just kind of see, do we all vibe? Like, is this going to be a good fit? And like, on my end, like, I loved that. And I knew that would be like a community that I wanted to be a part of. And then from like, I just thought it went really well. And I left there and I was like, well, that went better than the Skype interview. And, but try not to get my hopes up and was just like, regardless, this was an awesome experience. Like, I'm clearly like, you can pat yourself on the back because you're clearly headed in the right direction if you're at least getting noticed at this point, And then about 2 or 3 weeks later, I got the call that they wanted me to come down and be a part of the team. So I asked my boyfriend if he wanted to go to Vegas, and here we are. We've been here since last March, so almost like 15 months now.
That's great.
So,
yeah, I think I tend to relate to your boyfriend more. I don't follow much other sports but the UFC, so I'm following with that. But I think, going on the note of getting into working with the UFC, I think it just kind of goes back to your ability to take risks and not take no for an answer, and to really like trust in your own journey and yourself. Like, I love how you talk about like each experience. You're like, yeah, well, that interview was a little rough, but I had a good experience out of it. Or if they like even gave me that interview, like that's better than nothing. Like, I'm in the right way. I think that's a really kind of cool perspective to have, because I think a lot of people, like, they get the first call and then they don't get anything for a month and they start to like hole into themselves and then they like forget about what they're doing in the moment. So I totally appreciate like that perspective and sharing that with people. I think that's a good one to have.
Thank you. Yeah. It was a journey. That's for sure.
Yeah. It sounds like it.
I read, gosh, there's this book I read and I can't remember which one it was. Actually, I think it's this book right here. Hold on. The Myth of the Nice Girl by Fran Hauser. So
Ooh.
I read this last summer. I know, ironically, I'm at my bookshelf.
It's like
so
right here.
it's literally, that was weird. So I read this. Yes. And there's a like study in here somewhere that basically had said like it compared women and men in like just their profession on whether or not they felt like they either deserved or like were going or like wanted to apply for a job.
Mm-hmm.
And so basically the women and the men had the exact same qualifications. They weren't completely qualified for the jobs, but they were both, let's say they had like, I don't know, 5 out of the 10 qualifications, right? So the men, if you took 10 of them, 90% of the men would have applied for the job regardless. Only 40% of women would have.
That's crazy. That's why we're doing this. Like that's one of the reasons we're like trying to do this is like the thought process that some of us young women have, like, and just not taking the step is crazy to me. Sorry, but yeah, continue.
No, but that's what this is about, right? Like just like obviously there's not a lot of women in sports. There's not. And it's, I think a big part of it is just like either we're not believing in ourselves or we're like embarrassed to take the risk or, you know, whatever it is, but like we can't do that. Like if you want to get wherever you want to go, not even just in sports, like you got to believe in yourself a little bit and you just got to be like, you know what? Fuck it. Like, I'm just going to try it. I'm just going to do it. Like, and if it comes back and it's, you know, not your thing, then you just have to kind of be like, that's okay. Like, there's going to be something else. I know there's going to be something else. Just keep going.
Yeah. I mean, again, like Jackie said, like, and you said, like, this is why we're doing this, right? We need to open the conversation of like, why are there not more women in sports? Like this study, everyone was just as qualified, but for whatever reason, only X amount of women ended up applying. So I appreciate you touching on that because it is a big thing. And sometimes I think it is a subconscious thing. And this is a whole nother can of worms we could get into, but a subconscious belief about yourself or just why you don't end up going a certain direction when that's not the way it has to be. It's like a narrative that's you spin in your head when it's not the reality.
Absolutely.
But yeah, we won't go down that rabbit hole too much. We might
be a whole other podcast.
Yeah, we might bring up a couple other questions that could segue into something like that. But I know a question we get from a lot of mentees or listeners has to do with when working with male athletes, like especially maybe starting out. What did you feel like helped you getting some buy-in with your patients when you started? And it actually doesn't even have to be at the PI. It could even be whatever. Yeah.
I think that's a really great question. And I think for the most part, I feel like the athletes, at least my population, are pretty open. And, you know, if I'm there, it's for a reason. And they don't even like, they're not bougie as far as what kind of care that they want. They're like, I'm getting free care. This is amazing. And they're very grateful, but I have a very special population. But I can relate that back to, I think, like private practice a little bit more. And I think it all starts with just like making your patients feel like you actually care, like you really care. And I know we kind of get like short on time and sometimes that patient can't stop talking and we can't start asking questions. But I think like just listening to them, like really hearing them and just like making eye contact the whole time and like asking them like what they think about the situation and like just trying to connect on a level that's a little bit more like personal than professional, I think has made all the difference. So I think everything goes back to communication in this world. And so I think just, you know, instead of talking about like yourself and what you can offer and like all these cool things that you do, like, you know, talk to them about themselves and like what they want. Cause they're there like for what they need. Right. But sometimes they don't know what they want and they need and they're different. So kind of touching on both of those subjects in that first initial visit and building that trust about like, okay, I understand what your goals are, not just my goals for you, right? Like I want to get you out of pain and I want you to feel like you like it here and we're comfortable and we have a relationship and, you know, you're going to refer a million people, but like, I really want to know what you want to get out of this, because I feel like that's going to let them like that's going to make them stay. That's going to make them feel like listened to and taken care of. And that's really all what people want at the end of the day, is they just want to feel like they're being taken care of and listened to, and that their thoughts and concerns are valid, and that they understand what's going on. Because I know it's really easy for us to talk all this like fancy lingo and have fancy techniques, but like at the end of the day, they don't really care as long as you're making them better, right? And as long as you're kind of communicating that, and like, this is our, or whatever, finding out, I guess, the patient's love language in a way, right? Is like, because every patient's going to be super different. Like some are very visual. So I might get out a model or spine model or like show them hands-on stuff. Or some patients like really want to know that, like when I was in Seattle, my Microsoft workers really wanted to know like the ins and out analytical side of every pain science thing. So try to figure out in that initial visit, like what that person, like how their brain works and how that they communicate and how they receive communication. And obviously that's something that you don't learn in school. It's something that you have to kind of either like practice, learn on your own, read books about, like experiment with, whatever you got to do. So that's probably like the most important part of practice. Like they don't care if you're like having a new amazing technique. I mean, some of them do. They like that guru stuff. You're going to get that population. But for the most part, like they just want to know that you care and that you guys can be in communication and that they can reach out if they have questions, and that they just kind of know the plan and it feels like they're getting somewhere.
Yeah. I think there's so much power to what you just said too, because you really expanded on not just listening to your patient, but this isn't going to do it justice, but like really listening to your patient, like figuring out how they receive communication, or like you said, are they a visual learner? Do they need to know like every detail, or maybe do they just want to know why something's happening? Like I know I see that a lot too. People just want to know why they're in pain, and then they're more concerned on how to fix it. But again, everyone's different. And I love that you touched on setting goals together, because like you said, as a clinician coming out, a lot of time it's like, oh, I got to get them out of pain, or they got to be able to sit at work, they got to be able to do this, when
but sometimes they just want to like pick up their kid. That's it.
Exactly.
And like, like we can do that.
And I'm sure all three of us have had that patient where they come in and you're like, wow, like you're getting so much better, you can walk without pain now, you can do this without pain now. But like I had a guy last week, I'm like, you're progressing so well, this is great. And he's like, oh, I am. And I'm like, yeah, like why do you think you're not? And he goes, oh, well, I can only do the elliptical for 30 minutes right now, not 60. So it's like, it always comes back to be like, okay, that's his goal. So we need to make sure we're like hammering home to get to that. And it happens at every level of the profession.
Every level.
So I love that you touched on that. And also love languages. If no one knows love languages, like go look them up.
Go look it up.
It'll help your relationship. It'll help you be a better clinician.
Every relationship you have. And that's what you should kind of think about your patient relationship with. Like I know it's going to get like an emotionally exhausting to give that much to yourself, to others and stuff, and especially your patients, and then at home and your friendships and your family, but you're going to feel so much better about it. And you're going to just feel like, wow, I really helped that person. And I think they're more like, wow, she really helped me. Like they'll like really thank you for it. And I think that's like what we want at the end of the day. But like if you can almost treat your patient like your relationship, like you're going to get a lot more out of it, because they're going to feel that. They're going to feel like, okay, like she's on my team. Like, I can trust her, and I can, talk to her and she gets me, instead of just kind of like doing you and then like just not connecting with a whole population that you could help, but you're choosing almost not to, because you won't like change your mind or just listen, really, right? Just listen to what they need.
Yeah, I mean, totally agree. And I have always felt that, our schools for each of our professions should integrate a little bit more of like some sort of psychology or like, communication sorts of classes. Cause I often find like that's what I'm teaching people on at the beginning the most. Like obviously, yes, we're going over clinical skills and clinical reasoning, but really honing in on the subjective, because if you don't get all of these great things that you guys are talking about at the beginning, everything else doesn't go smoothly. And I think some people also have a hard time like kind of being a chameleon and how they communicate with someone, especially if you're someone who's like, I am who I am and whatever. But like sometimes you have to meet people halfway a little bit, and then gaining their trust and gaining their confidence, I think is half the battle, and honestly getting someone better. So kind of going off the note of like communicating, and you've had like tons of experience in an interdisciplinary setting, which I think is pretty unique for someone coming like you worked from it pretty early in your career. What are some kind of tips and tricks for like smooth communication between the interdisciplinary team? Because I think for some reason there's still this idea of competition between all of our fields, and there does not need to be. And so people are nervous to like be a PT and go up to the chiro and say like, well, what do you think about this? Or go up to the AT or strength and conditioning coach. So what have you kind of learned to kind of deal with all of those sorts of communication styles?
Oh, it's so important. And isn't that the constant issue with everything? So obviously we have a team of like everybody on staff, right? So we have strength coaches, PTs, ATCs, DCs, sports scientists, what else? We have nutritionists, sports dietetics, we have sports psych now. So yeah, we have a lot of different backgrounds and a lot of different personalities, right? And it's super hard because I tend to be like a very like straight shooter, honest, like don't really beat about the bush. I'm just kind of like gonna throw it in your face. And sometimes that can come off like aggressive or like bossy or something like that. And those are definitely trigger words. But like, I think there are some people, and I kind of did that for a really long time. I'm like, oh, it's just how I communicate. Like you guys have to deal with it kind of thing. And, you know, not recently, but I kind of realized over time, like people have different sensitivity levels than you do. Like, people can be a lot more sensitive than you, T. Like you need to chill out and maybe go about it a different way, not for you, for them. So I think one of the most important things is like when you go like maybe into a new job or a new, you know, where you have to kind of figure people out, like I think it's important to kind of like take the time to get to know that person, like outside of work. Again, kind of just going back to seeing how they vibe, how they communicate, ask them what their expectations are, ask them like, how can I make your lives easier? Like, what are you guys lacking? What can I bring to help to make our communication and interdisciplinary teams like work better together? And I think what's really cool about like what Heather and also our ATC Bobby and I have is I don't really feel like there's a lot of egos on our team. And even though, yes, we do have different degrees and like, you know, we all kind of have like our niche, like we all work pretty similarly together. And I think that's something that Heather saw and has been trying to like just form. Like you can kind of come in and you should get the same treatment and like the same mindset in all of us, right? And like, sure, if like Heather needs me to come in and adjust someone, I can do that. Or if I need Bobby to like tape an ankle or do some wound care, like I can ask him to do that. But I think it's finding out how your team communicates really well. Over communicating is like probably the biggest thing. You have to over communicate, even if it feels like you're annoying the shit out of them. Like just do it, because then things don't fall through the crack and you make sure you're on the same page. And then just like finding what works for your team. So like our whole team, we get together every single Monday morning. We talk through every case. We talk through the week. We like are constantly on like an email thread, a text thread, like all day with each other. We, you know, have a nice open floor plan where we can kind of like, I can like finish with the patient and then take him to his S&C session and be like, hey, Matt, like, you know, so-and-so is having shoulder pain today. Let's not do any overhead movements. And he can be like, okay, cool. I'll take that out of the program for the day and figure something else out. And like, so it's making sure that you just like, even if someone doesn't have the same qualifications or as you, like, you need to know like how to approach them in a way that works for them, not really even for you. You're going to have to modify and adapt to different people. And I think that's how you really can succeed in that interdisciplinary setting. It's kind of being like a communication chameleon. I should term that. No, I'm just kidding.
Trademark that.
Trademark that shit. Yeah. No, but it is. It's all about communication. It all comes back to it, but it's about trying to be good about it. And I'm still learning. I'm still like, there's lots of times I'm like, I shouldn't have said that, you know, like, or that came out way wrong. And And as long as you kind of like can recognize that, and then like a lot of times I might recognize that, but I'll go backtrack and I'll be like, hey, I'm sorry, I think that came off a certain way. Let me just make sure we're on the same page. Or like, I'm sorry the way that came out, or like, did you get that? Or like, just kind of backtracking to it if you felt like it was left weird. Because like the last thing I want to do is offend anyone, and it's never like your intention to, or it's never your intention to like, discredit someone else's like opinion or their like credentials after their name or what their thoughts are. But you definitely have to find a way to, I think, make that blend. And I think a good start is to just like getting to know them on a personal level, and like what their communication skills and levels are and what their expectations are. And I think from then you can kind of figure out a good way to like vibe. But if it's still going to be hard, and even if you do think like that, like not everyone is going to think like that, right? So like I could go talk to another PT and we'd be on the same page because we figured out each other's communication, and I can go to another PT and talk and they're just not having any of it, and they still have this thing in their head about Kairos or whatever it is. So at the end of the day, like do what you can with those people, like try your best. If maybe you need to have a sit down convo on the side and be like, hey, like I really want to get on the same page. What works for you? What works for me? And again, if they're still not having it, you just got to try your best, right? Like there's always going to be people that you can't please, or that you won't communicate well, or that you're going to offend. But like, that's something I struggled with too, is just like not letting it like get to you forever. Like just be like, you know what, like let it go. Past is in the past. Like you did what you could. Maybe that relationship's just not going to be one that benefits each other in the long run or whatever it is, but you still have to be cordial, and you just need to figure that stuff out.
Yeah, I think it's interesting because in the way we're talking about communicating with the interdisciplinary team, it's also very similar in the way we just talked about being a clinician to a patient in a little different light, right? So sometimes I feel like people lose sight of like, it's the same thing. You have a patient in front of you, you want to learn about them, right? That's what gets the ability to communicate them with the best, explain things to them the best, or whatever it may be. It's literally the same thing with your team, except now you're working as a team and you're not trying to get buy-in and get your patient back in the door or whatever it is. So the more you just look at the situation less in a competitive way and less in a like, I want to do everything kind of way, and more of like, well, I know they know shit. That's why they're here. Right.
Yeah.
And let's learn from each other. Let's learn how they communicate, and let's like work as a freaking team. Like,
yeah. And just like, sit down and find each other's strengths and weaknesses too. Right. Like, and learn from each other, like take lunch breaks to either talk to each other or like go over a technique so that you're all on the same page now. So that like, if I can learn, or if I can teach somebody something, like that makes my day. So if you come up to me and ask me like, hey, can you show me how a thoracic mob? I'm like, fuck yeah, let's go. Like, that's exciting for me. And I wish more people were more willing to kind of like teach each other and like take that time and like think of it not as a competition, because it's not. We all have the same goal, and it's to get that athlete or that patient better as soon as we can, right? So if we need to blend our worlds, and like if I'm not getting results, I'm gonna like be like, hey, Heather, can you come look at this? Like, what do you think about this? Because like you're in the same room or you're in the same clinic. Like, why can't you bring like, you send out for different opinions and referrals, but now you have them in the same house. Like use them to your advantage. Like the more eyes, the better on things. And then it's just like, if you pull in somebody like that, they're going to be like, wow, she like trusts my opinion. Like we can have a cool conversation about this. We can work together. And it kind of like organically like gets better from then on out. But like, you have to show that you're open to them too, not just like going up to them and expecting them to be open to you.
For sure.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. A lot of times, if you show you're open to them first, you might have a little more success down the road. And I think both of you hit the nail on the head with like, how important it is to just try to work together and teach each other, and that the goal is like ego aside, help your patient, help your athlete. But I also love that you touched on a little bit about hard conversations, and like sometimes you need to just take someone and sit them down, and it's going to be uncomfortable, and it's and it might not have the best outcome, but at least you like sat down and tried to hash it out. I can't remember who said this. It might be like Breanne Brown, but she talks about hard conversations, and like they suck. There's like no way around it. They suck, but the only way you get better at them is like if you keep attempting to have them. versus
Yes.
like pushing it off. So I just appreciate you touching on that too.
No, you're totally right. I'm still, I think, uncomfortable with some situations, but the more I do it, the more I'm like, why wouldn't I have this conversation? Like, I don't want to think about this all day. I don't want this in the back of my mind. I don't want to tiptoe around stuff. Like, that's so much mental energy that like I could be putting into my job or myself or my boyfriend, my relationship, whatever. Like, it's not worth it to feel like that. Like, have the combo, like put your big girl pants on. Not only are you going to get better at communicating, but you're regardless, you're going to feel better no matter what that outcome is, because it's just going to be off your chest.
Definitely. I think this is kind of a good segue into the next question and kind of like wrapping things up, but you've already given a lot of tangible advice and even just like action steps in this podcast, which I know like we appreciate and our listeners really appreciate. But is there anything else or any advice you'd maybe offer to someone who aspires to be kind of in the position you're in?
Yeah, I mean, I think I feel like we've had some great combos for sure. And I feel like my personal big number one is don't settle. Like, don't settle for a relationship. Don't settle for a job that you hate. Don't settle in a city that you're not excited about living in. Like, there's no time for that stuff. Like, go and figure out what you want and like make it happen. And like, there is always a way. And if it's not, and if it doesn't seem like an immediate path, like take that first step and like just kind of like mark it out. Like, okay, I'm going to apply for the license in this state. I'm going to look for jobs in this state. I'm going to do like baby steps toward to whatever you want to do, wherever you want to go. Or like, I'm going to go to this seminar because I know that this person who I look up to and want to be is going to be there. Or like, instead of like, oh, I want to go work for him. Like that was like my journey, at least. Like, I knew I wasn't going to graduate chiro school and just like be in pro sports. Like, that's not going to happen. But I knew like, okay, if I went and shadowed someone, and then if I went and worked with someone, and then if I went and did this and just kind of like just found a way to make it happen. And I promise you can find a way to do anything. Like, you just can't stop. You're going to fail if you stop, but if you don't stop, you're eventually going to figure it out and get there. And like, I mean, you're in PT school, you're in chiro school, you're smart. Like, you're smart. You're not a dumb girl. You like put yourself out there, like figure it out. And one of this, probably the second most important thing that I feel like women don't do, and a lot of people don't do, is they don't ask for help. Like, if I can't figure something out, I'm going to ask somebody who's been there and done it. Like, I, just did another podcast and I could not figure out like how to record on Zoom or like, YouTube for the life of me. So I just called somebody and asked for help. Like, it's such an, like, I don't know if it's an ego thing or whatever it is. I mean, like, have you ever been to the grocery store with your boyfriend and like they can't find anything, but they refuse to ask any cashier or person for help, and it's infuriating.
Who works
and you're
there?
like, but you're wasting your time. Like, why? We're wasting our time when we like don't ask for help. Like, you could already have known this answer by just reaching out to someone and figuring it out. Or, if you can't figure out it on your own. So like, my two biggest things and like my, like, I guess my slogans in life is like, don't settle and like ask for help if you need it.
Yeah. Both of those I think are great advice. And also like starting with asking for help, like a lot, like we kind of touched on earlier, there's not a ton of women in sports, but why would you not reach out to someone and just like ask how they got there? If you have a question, like, can I come shadow you? What's the worst they're going to say no? Or like, I have this patient case and I know you work with this population. Would you mind taking like 20 minutes out of your day to just chat with me about this? So it sounds like such a easy thing and like a duh thing, but I think you also brought up a good point. Again, I don't know why this is, again, we can go down another rabbit hole for that, but with, because we've heard this answer too. And with a lot of individuals in our field, sometimes it's not the easiest thing to ask for help. So maybe it's an ego thing, like who knows? Yeah. But I love that you brought that up. And I love when you said don't settle, you also brought up the fact that like you tried different things to maybe get to where you want to do. Like, I'm reading a book called Essentialism, and in the beginning of the book, it literally says like, you have to try things to figure it out whether you like it or not. There's no other way you're going to figure out if you really want this goal, if you really want this thing, if you don't try something to work towards it. Like worst comes to worst, you kind of figure out, actually, I don't like this. And then you learn like, okay, let me go this direction. Like, let me pivot. So I love that you brought that up too.
Yeah. And I think that circled back to like what we were talking about in the beginning about just like, you know, just going out there, trying new things, like figuring out what you want, right? Like once you do that, everything just kind of makes sense. Yeah. And you like start finding ways to like make it happen.
Yeah.
So like if it's sports, like, and if you're like, okay, the end goal sports, okay, then you have to figure out like, okay, well, what's the step before it and the step before it? And like, what's the baby step that I can take to get there? And everyone's going to have like a different path to do that. But like really find out like what you like and what you want. And a lot of people think they know what they like and they want. And then they get there and they're like, ooh, I don't actually know. So then just keep trying things. Like you said, like just keep trying, don't settle, and you'll figure it out.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a great point in the sense of like a lot of people have their eye on this prize, but they don't take the time to like break it down, like you just mentioned, and break it down into like the next baby step. Because I think sometimes people try to jump too far, and then those are the times that they're like, I don't like this. And then they spend all this time to reach that.
Yeah, or they get frustrated, or they're like, oh, I can't do it. It's because you're doing too big of a step. Like, you know, you're not going to go into pro sports right out of school. Like that's very rare. Like, so what do you got to do to make yourself look like that good candidate, or put yourself in a position where you are being seen? And that's like taking the job across the country, or, you know, taking seminars and networking, or jumping on calls with, you know, like I did like a presentation like a virtual conference last weekend. And I was like, you guys want to reach out. And I've already had like a bunch of calls with students, and like, kudos to them. Like they call, like those guys called, and like, and I'm going to answer, and you'll be surprised. Like you're rarely going to get no's from people, because if you're going to aspire to be like at this level, there's like a thing, it's just like a no-brainer. Like we want to give back. We want everyone to be on this level. Like we're going to say yes to you because we were there too. And we needed people to say yes to us.
Yeah. So on that note, Tera, if someone wants to kind of find you and connect with you, what is the best way to do that?
Yeah, you can find me and shoot me a message on Instagram. My handle is at Dr. Tera, DRTERA. Or you can shoot me an email at T as in Tera, my last name Giroux, GIROUX @UFC.com.
Awesome, Tera. Well, thank you so much for taking some time out of your Sunday and hanging out with us. I know things have heated up a lot with the UFC, and it's not easy to take some time out of your day. So thank you again, and we hope to talk to you soon.
Yep, we appreciate it.
Bye. Thanks so much for having me. I appreciate it.
Thank you for listening to the Women Leaders in Sports Medicine podcast. This podcast is for you to take a step closer to your dreams. Visit www.womenleadersinsportsmedicine.com to join our roundtables, learn about our mentorship programs, and to let us know what you want to hear. Have a great day, and remember, it's your time to lead.